My name is Paige Sutton. I was 34 when I got back to Oregon. And less than 12 hours later, my sister Blair locked me out in the rain. I stepped off the airport shuttle with one duffel, one backpack, and nowhere else to land, because the only family address I still had was my father's house. By the time I reached the hill, the windows were glowing over a catered dinner, and Blair opened the door wearing silk and the kind of smile that excluded me. She looked at my wet jacket, my boots, the strap cutting into my shoulder, then leaned against the frame for a second and landed on. "You pick tonight." "Really?" I told her I had just landed. I needed a couch for 2 nights, and I was too tired to argue. But Blair's mouth tightened around. "This isn't a shelter." When I glanced past her shoulder at the table settings and donors with wine glasses, she shifted harder into the doorway and went, "Don't do this here." I told her I did not have hotel money yet, that discharge pay had not hit, and she gave a short, bright laugh like poverty embarrassed her in that doorway. Then she took the estate packet from the entry table, pressed it into my hand, and all I got was, "If Dad wanted you inside, he'd have left you better." A folded slip caught under the staple scraped my thumb when the packet shifted, and in Walter Sutton's block letters I read, "If she gives you the wrong thing first." I barely had time to turn the page before Blair grabbed my duffel, flung it off the porch into the hedge. And all at once, "You are not humiliating me." The door slammed. The deadbolt clicked, and I stood under the porch light with rain running off my sleeves while voices inside thinned into careful, rich silence behind glass. I picked up my bag, read the note, and headed toward the shuttered awning shop Dad had left me, because wrong thing first meant something else was waiting. The awning shop sat 3 miles from the house, dark behind a chain fence, its sign peeling over windows filmed with dust and river weather. Dad had called it Sutton Canvas for years, and the first lock gave way so easily it felt like he still expected me. Inside, the air held wet fabric, machine grease, and mildew, and the note in my pocket kept needling me with it. "Start where the invoices stop." I found the billing desk under tarps, opened swollen drawers, and saw invoice books ending mid-season, with no transfers, closure notes, or any forwarding pages. That gap sent me through the cutting room, where the concrete changed color beneath a steel table, and dragging it aside revealed a square hatch. The room below was dry and organized, nothing like the rot upstairs, with labeled boxes, deed copies, trust papers, and a steel drawer marked Blair. I read until dawn pushed gray light through the front windows, and every page narrowed the same truth. Dad had not abandoned me, only hidden sequence. There was a promissory note tied to money he had advanced Blair, a recorded deed of trust, and notes tracking missed disclosures after his decline. I called Grant Hollis from the office landline, and after hearing the deed of trust, omitted inventory, and Blair, he went very quiet. When I told him I had only seen an estate summary and a handwritten note, he cut in, "That summary is not the whole probate picture." He walked me through the next step in plain English. "Keep everything where it is. Copy nothing yet. Touch nothing twice. And let me file first." I asked whether Blair could really leave this out, and his answer landed clean. "If she withheld estate writings or debt records, the court will care." Then I opened Dad's letter. 3 short pages with no apology in them. Only this: Blair would choose the house, but you would follow the work. I sat in that old office with grease on my sleeve and his handwriting in my hand, and for the first time, the night stopped feeling final. He had not left me the pretty thing first. He had left me the true thing first. And truth, unlike Blair, did not lock me out. By the second morning, I had hauled out ruined canvas, paid an electrician to restore one working circuit, and cleared the front counter for papers. Grant filed the petition for review, the demand for a supplemental inventory, and a preservation notice, then told me, "Let procedure move first before anything louder starts." Dana Keene arrived that afternoon, spread statements across Dad's cutting table, and tapped the pattern twice. On paper, visibility high, liquidity thin, debt timed against appearance. She traced Blair's refinances, vendor balances, and card payments, then gave me the plain version. "Your sister isn't rich. She's performing rich with borrowed air right now." I asked what that meant, and Dana slid one statement closer with, "It means the house has to stay clean, admired, and untangled for lenders." I spent the rest of the day replacing bulbs, sweeping glass from the office, and watching the first strip of overhead light reach Dad's old floor. Blair showed up before sunset in a white SUV that looked too polished for this block and too expensive. Stepped inside, and stopped at the smell of dust. Her eyes moved from the lit workbench to the cleared aisle, then fixed on me with, "You're actually living in this place now?" I tightened the last screw on a metal shelf and gave her the only answer she had earned. "I'm working in the place Dad left me." She laughed once, looked around the room, and reached for contempt first. "This is not a comeback, Paige. This is fluorescent failure and bad taste." I told her the lights were new, the wiring was stable, and for the first time that week, something in this family was running honestly. Her face tightened, and she stepped closer with, "Whatever Grant is filling your head with, stop before you embarrass yourself in public." I set the screwdriver down, wiped my hands, and looked at her the way I used to inspect failing equipment. Not emotional, just exact. Then I gave her the truth she had earned on the porch. "You made it public the night you locked me out to us." For a beat, Blair lost the polished expression, stared at the lit shop, the cleared desk, the surviving files, and walked back out without another word. By the end of that week, Grant had filed for a supplemental accounting, a formal review of the omitted debt papers, and an order preserving every estate record Blair touched. He called while I was replacing the office lock and gave me the plain version. "She can keep smiling in public, but the court now expects numbers, dates, and signatures." I looked at the new brass cylinder in my hand, the old one on the floor, and understood exactly what he meant about appearances still holding while ownership started loosening underneath. 2 days later, a title officer flagged the recorded deed of trust tied to Dad's old advance, and the quiet delay landed where Blair had been counting on speed. Dana brought fresh printouts to the shop, ran her finger under a refinance date, then under a vendor balance, and gave me, "This only works if nobody slows her paperwork." I asked how fast pressure traveled once lenders smelled confusion, and Dana folded the statements closed with, "Fast enough to make expensive people sound humble on the phone." Blair called before noon. No greeting, no silk in her voice. Only, "What exactly did you file? And why is title asking questions about Dad's money?" I kept looking at the repaired front window while trucks moved through the industrial block outside and told her, "The better question is, why title never got the full picture sooner?" She tried family first, then shame, then anger, landing hard on, "You are turning Dad into a legal spectacle." And all I gave her back was, "You turned him into leverage first." That evening, Mason Reed, the special assets officer tied to one of Blair's credit lines, met her at the house and called me afterward with procedural restraint. He did not offer sympathy, only a clean summary. "Until title clears and the probate matter is resolved, flexibility ends. Further accommodation pauses, and risk gets priced differently." I thanked him, wrote every word down beside Dad's old invoice books, and sat there staring at ink, debt, and dates until the shape of her life looked less glamorous than fragile. Blair came to the shop again the next morning in a cashmere coat over visible panic, stepped around stacked canvas rolls, and opened with, "Congratulations, Paige. You finally found a way to ruin what's left." I looked past her at the lit ceiling, the swept floor, the work table where Dana had spread the statements, and answered with the only thing this moment allowed. I did not ruin it. I uncovered it. Her mouth parted like she wanted the old porch version of me back, the soaked woman asking for mercy. But the lights stayed on, and she left, with nothing. I drove up to the house just after dusk in Dad's old pickup, parked behind a row of polished cars, and walked toward the same front door Blair had locked. Through the windows, I could see donors at candlelit tables, the staff moving with quiet precision, and Blair near the fireplace wearing calm like it still belonged to her. When she spotted me crossing the foyer, her smile held for one beat too long before breaking around. You really came here tonight. Paige. Dressed for what? I looked at the room she had staged around herself. The silver, the glass, the low voices, and gave her exactly what the evening had earned. For paperwork. She stepped closer so the guests would only catch the shine of her teeth and not the pressure underneath. Then cut low with, "Don't do this in my house." I kept my voice where everyone could ignore it if they wanted and answered. You use this house as proof. Blair. And proof is why I'm here. Before she could move me back toward the hallway, Grant came through the front entry with a leather folder, Deputy Owen Briggs beside him, and the room noticed. Blair turned at once, reached for poise, and tried. Grant. This is a donor supper. Whatever this is can wait until tomorrow morning. He handed over the citation, the supplemental petition, and the notice tied to the disputed debt papers, then gave her the clean truth. The court disagrees. The room did not explode, which made the shift harsher, because the only sound was silverware settling while people started listening harder than they wanted. Blair looked at the top page, then at me, and for the first time since that rainy night, her voice thinned around. You planned this humiliation. I did not raise mine when I answered. You chose the audience the night you threw my bag into the hedge and locked the door. Mason Reed arrived seconds later from the side hall where someone had clearly tried to keep him out of sight. But risk always finds the bright room. He stopped near the table, looked from Blair to the papers in her hand, and kept it procedural. Until title clears and the probate dispute resolves. Prior flexibility is suspended. That landed harder than anger could have, because two donors lowered their glasses at once. One couple exchanged a look, and the room finally understood this was not gossip. Blair turned back to me with color draining under the makeup. Trying family now because status was failing. Then pressed out. Dad trusted me to hold this together. I thought of the omitted debt papers, the delayed title questions, the work table where Dana lined up dates, and gave her only evidence. Dad trusted records, not performance. No one rushed to save her. No one told me to leave. And by the time the first guest slipped toward the door, the supper had already ended. By early spring, the probate filings had been corrected. The debt tied to Dad's old advance had been acknowledged, and the house stopped functioning like untouchable proof. Blair sold furniture first, then the car, then the kind of decorative certainty people buy when they need strangers to assume success. Nothing happened all at once, which made it feel more real, because consequence in adult life usually arrives as invoices, signatures, and smaller rooms. The shop looked different by then, not transformed into something glossy, just steadier, with repaired rollers, clean glass, and enough light to keep evening honest. I renamed it Sutton Transition Workshop, kept Dad's work table in the center, and used part of the trust to build a small fund for veterans starting over. The first time someone came in asking about temporary housing referrals instead of awning repairs, I handed over a printed list and did not feel lost. Blair came in on a gray Tuesday morning wearing a plain coat, no heels, no audience, and stood just inside the door until the bell stopped moving. She looked at the intake forms, the coffee station, the volunteer board, then at me behind Dad's counter and asked, quietly this time, "Do you need help here?" I told her I needed reliability, paperwork done correctly, and someone who understood that a locked door can follow a person longer than rain. Her apology was brief, stripped of polish, and closer to the ground than anything she had ever offered me on the night she chose witnesses. I did not give her forgiveness dressed up as poetry. Only terms: hourly pay, limited access, no touch on the fund, and no borrowing my name. She nodded at each condition like someone learning the weight of simple things, then took the clipboard from my hand and started with inventory. We were never suddenly close, and I did not need a miracle to know the ending had changed, because every light in that shop stayed on. Dad had not given me the house on the hill, but he had left me a place where work, truth, and shelter could fit together. If you stayed with me through this, thank you for hearing it out. And I hope whatever door once closed on you opens into peace. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If any part of it felt familiar, I hope you find your own way toward peace, steadiness, and a life that finally feels like home. Stay with this channel for more stories about truth, healing, second chances, and the quiet strength that carries people forward.